Hadi. 7-3.
What's beyond your mind?
Not gonna do it.
Strength and honor.
38. I'm gonna come back. Hinterlands? No. Yeah, I'm going to the Hinterlands. No, not the Hinterlands. Where is it? Right here. Badlands? No. Swamp. Blasted lands. Deadwind Pass. Blasted lands. Jungle Wound. Oh, okay. I go here. All the way through here. Okay, I go here. Go to here. To here. That's a long ass way, but 35, 37, I can do that.
Time is money, friend. Keep it real.
8, 12, 16. Scotty, did you go run this morning? Did you just wake up? Did you go run? Done with 3 hours? Man, your first day and you go 3 hours? You don't want to burn yourself out. You want to ease into it. You want to feel like it's not such a big commitment so you can do it easily every time. You should ramp yourself up. Because you get sore, you get tired, you're like, So what did you do? I'm proud of you. Good job. Your health is your number one. Whenever you feel down, go exercise and run. You immediately feel better. Just got home from walking, running. Okay. Good job. You did it. Well, I trust you did it. You can't be trolling that right now. Because if you troll me right now, you're just trolling yourself. Alright, I'm going here. Can't do any of these. I can't do any of these. Oh, shit. Got the buff. That's a long ass way to run, though. Increase movement at 10% though. Okay. I'm going to the wrong place. I'm going up here. We're going. Not whole 3 hours non-stop, but the duration of the program. That's pretty good. I think that's a little bit too much, especially on your first day. Hope you didn't get burned out and give up. Does it feel good? A little sore? You run, tired, eat your breakfast. Eat the morning breakfast. Eat the best thing you can do. 早上吃得好，中午吃得饱，下午吃得少。Or as they say, eat like a king in the morning, like a lord in the afternoon. Eat like a peasant at night. Not really, but just eat a little bit less at night. Eat your best food in the morning. Get your metabolism going. Get your day going. Felt the lane you're crushing. Okay, the first is gonna be hard. After about 2 weeks, you'll be like, you want to jog, right? This is what you want to do. You know, slow your pace as long as you're jogging, running. And once you make it back, the last 100 meters, go full out and sprint. Like when you're so tired, just sprint the rest of your energy out. Maybe the black thing from nicotine slowly removed. Dang, cigarette smoker? Yeah, you gotta get that cigarette out of there. Maybe. Maybe every time you huff and puff, you're just blowing that black smoke out of your lung. It truly is. It's really hard in the beginning. I hope you failed a little bit. You know, I know it's hard. Get up and did it. It's very good. You just have to make it into a habit that it's like automatic in the morning. It's like you don't even push yourself anymore. It's just automatic. But you have to kind of push yourself in the morning. Because when I started running years ago. But when I stopped for like half a year, you can tell. I can tell. I'm still not caught back to my peak running form yet because of the time when I stopped. So you really want to just keep going and not stop. And it's going to take a lot of effort to get back to where you're peak forming. Yeah, I can feel my stomach getting bigger. Even now jogging is like, I have to walk sometime. Before I would just straight up run all the way. And once you get to that point where you stop, it's just hard to get back to your peak form again. I feel a little better. But my mind is still thinking I'm gonna still do it tomorrow. It's 20-day program from you. Okay, good. Good. As long as you're dedicated, go through it, I'm proud of you. I mean, you just reevaluate. Just don't think and just do it for 20 days. And see if you still, feel that hard to do it, or is just part of your routine. Wait, is it cold there right now? What's the degree? Like, you guys in the tropical area, so it's still pretty warm, right? It's so cold now. I get up to run in the morning for me. It's like freezing. I have to cover my arms, my hands. I have to put my hoodie on. It's like almost freezing. But you keep doing it. You're doing it in the summer, you're doing it in winter. One thing that kind of helped me get up is also Felix. That's the only time. That's like his most favorite time of the day. Just get up and run with me and my mom. So what I do is I call my mom up to run first. She get a half-hour start. Then she take the Felix. Shit. What is it? 29? Okay, they can't kill me here, right? What the hell is this? I don't think I'm going to the right place. I need to stick to the side. Cold season, typhoon month. Oh. Yeah, the only time we don't go run is when it's raining. It's like a little day off. The hell? Alright, stay off the roads. I'm gonna stay off the roads. The I'm scared of this place, man. There's a bunch of PvPs and I don't want to run into a elite out here. Darkshire. There's no tiny, right? Shit, Stormwind. Darkshire. Sky Shadow. We made it. Oh, these whelps. I think these whelps are the ones where I remember finding that whelp pen. My original shaman. I sold for thousands of gold. Maybe I can get another one. No, they don't have no. They have pets, right? They just can't battle. Just a battle. Yeah. The dragon. Itaurus.
Hello.
Do you know Ironicus? What?
It's too far away. The spell isn't ready yet. I can't cast it. I'm still recharging. The spell isn't ready yet. I need to get closer. I need to get closer.
Oh man, they're both coming. Can I do it?
I can't cast it. The spell isn't ready. The spell isn't ready. My mana is low. My mana.
Ooh. No food? No food?
I need more mana.
I get 2 of these, I'm dead. Damn, 9 second, 9 second net. It's crazy. Jeez. It's net. I'm out of. I need to level 5 soon. Get some moonberry juice. What? It's a PvP? 33? Damn, what am I doing here?
I need to get closer.
Oh, there's a 36 here.
I need to get closer. Got spell ready.
6 more. Almost there. Oh, shit. I think I missed. Sorry. Happy real side. I'm sorry. I think I missed it. I missed some chat from YouTube. Dang, I didn't see it. Because I wasn't on multi chat. Just saw it right now.
I can't cast that yet. That spell. I need to get closer. That's still recharging. That spell. Charging.
Sorry I missed some of your YouTube. Sorry I missed chat. Oh, just realized it now.
I can't cast that yet. I can't cast that yet. That spell. I can't cast it. That's still recharging.
Slow and steady. Slow, steady. Our 3-second channel time. Minus one.
That's still recharging. I can't cast it. That spell is ready. Charging.
Not enough mana.
It's too far away. I need to get closer. It's too far away. But still. Charging. That spell isn't ready yet. I can't cast that. I can't cast that. That spell isn't ready yet. That's still charging. That's still charging.
One more? Three more.
That spell isn't ready yet. That spell That spell That's still charging. I can't cast that.
Out of mana. A spirit, a stamina. 16. Alright. I need the stamina. Spirit. Man, barely 30 something. The last, how long did it take? Like a week? No, it took like almost 10 days. The last tornado was gonna take a month? 40 days. How am I gonna get my mana? Requires 48. Is there dragonfly? What? Ah. Okay, what do I do? Occasionally bleach film and a chuck in a melee for the next 10 minutes. Store, carrying supplies, cooking. I need to sell some stuff. Take some potion. Alright, let's do it. Just a little bit.
I'm out of range.
Potion.
I'm out of range.
What? Didn't get it.
That's still recharging.
One more. One more. Come on. Level 41. Ouch. Always wanna. He died here at level 41? Damn, must be a dragon. He probably ran into the floating dragon.
I'm out of range. I need to get closer. Taboo.
Magic dragons.
Brawlhalla. McGraw. Go forth to victory. Tug tug.
To cook.
McGraw. May your blaze never dull. Be safe. What are you looking for? Strength. Loktar. Blood and thunder. Speak, friend.
Cooking. There, wicked claw. After flash. Protection. Mystery mate. After flash, I can cook some stuff. I need to go level up my cooking. And where do I go level up my cooking? I think it's... Okay, magic dragons I can't do. I can do mushrooms. Okay, go back to that. I haven't killed them all yet. Swamp. Where's this? What the hell is this? Oh, there's Kargat. Okay. It's Badlands. Collecting mushrooms. That's all I can. Okay, I'm going back. Yes. Alright. 36. Damn. I think I'm done here. I'll come back later. Got the flight path. Wait. Oh, I already got it, right?
我们现在来看一看，我们为什么难过，我们为什么哀伤？因为这两种情绪啊，也是我们经常会碰到，几乎每一个人都曾经难过过，都曾经哀伤过。因为难过，它是一种非常普遍的情绪，每一个人多多少少都曾经难过。难过的时间有时候很长，有时候很短。难过的程度有时候很强烈，有时候呢，它又很薄弱。你跟人开始有距离，没有办法很亲密的时候，你就会觉得难过。一个常常见面的人，很久不见面了，你就会思念他，你就会觉得难过。你很受重视，突然间被冷落了。老板有事情常常跟你商量，现在理都不理你了，你就开始难过。你很有把握的事情，结果这样做不好，你也难过。生离死别，那更难过。所以我们常常会感觉到，为什么外国人见了面就很热烈的握手，就拥抱，而中国人不会这样，是什么道理？因为你对一个人，如果你觉得我们很快会见面，你有必要那么激烈的去道别吗？有必要吗？没有必要。我每一次看到外国人要道别那种样子，我就说好像从此不见面一样，那不是很糟糕？一个人只有从此不见面，才会那么慎重啊，一而再三的道别。马上要见面了，打个招呼就走了，甚至不说就走了嘛。没有到生离死别的程度，居然有生离死别的样子，这是我每次都觉得很奇怪的。那是一种不祥之兆。好像当你看到一个人，你要跟他道别的时候，你突然间很难过，甚至想哭，你会一而再跟他，我告诉你，这是不祥的征兆，就表示从此不见面。你应该从心理上去打消这个东西。我们很快又见面了，打个招呼就走了。我看过一幕是没有办法解释的，那个祖父祖母送小孙子去上学，到了校门口依依不舍，祖母还哭。我心里想，你这个小孙子晚上不回家吗？有这个必要吗？那不是很可笑的事情？我们难过，经常跟其他的情绪会连在一起。愤怒，愤怒；难过，难过，难过，愤怒；害怕，害怕；难过，难过，难过，害怕；感觉到羞耻，羞耻，就开始难过；感觉到难过，难过，然后就觉得自己好像脸上无光，就觉得有羞耻感。我们也可以变成有用的，不完全是坏的。当一个人很难过的时候，他可能就很认真去做事情；当一个人很难过的时候，他就会珍惜他眼前的机会；当一个人很难过的时候，他就会改变他的态度。我已经讲过，有利必有弊，有好就有坏，看你自己怎么去。我用2个字叫做转化，叫做转化。你看，我们家里面有长辈过世了，我们经常劝他4个字，叫节哀顺变。因为你一直在那里哭有什么用？你要体会先人的遗志，他没有完成的事情，你把它完成了，比天天哭要有效。这可以转化。你发现我们中国人扫墓只能清明去，平常不可以去，不能想到就去坟墓，想到就去坟墓，那人不要做事。那清明不去是不可以，但常常去也不可以，它是有个合理的程度的。 对祖先要怀念，但是不能永远活在祖先的怀抱当中了。我们要记住，难过它是不必发生任何的责任，而其他的会产生责任问题。你看难过有什么责任？所以当你难过的时候，你应该很高兴才对。哎，我这件事情会难过，就表示我有羞耻心。哎，我对这件事会难过，就表示我很珍惜这个机会。哎，我这个人会难过，就表示我有责任感，不然我怎么会难过呢？你老板不让我做就不让我做嘛，是不是一起的？为什么老板不让我做我会难过？就是因为我有责任感。那我就想办法去把我的责任感表现出来。那我的责任感为什么表现不出来？就是因为我能力不足嘛。那能力不足，我回家就多练习嘛，我多人家请教嘛。然后过2天，我完全是个新的姿态，那我就可以尽到责任。那他就不会给我难堪，我就不必难过。这就叫转化。但是我们难过的时候，我们经常受到压抑，不敢表达，因为我们从小就有一些禁忌，好像你表达出来就是不对。有一些好像男人有泪不轻弹，男人掉眼泪很丢脸，所以你就忍住。那现在有一种新的说法，说男人也要掉眼泪，这都是二分法。其实中国人讲不掉就是要掉，你看不轻弹就是不轻易流眼泪，还是要流啊。我们不会解释嘛，叫你男人有泪不轻弹，就是不轻易流，你到处流，那有什么用？但是当你要流泪的时候，你想到一个人，这个人叫刘备。刘备就是哭出来，他天下都是哭出来的，哭到有荆州，哭到有益州，哭到当汉中王。他为什么不能哭啊？很多人事业是哭出来的，很多人机会是哀求的。那你愿不愿意是你自己决定，你又不能说他对，也不能说他错。眼泪往肚子里面吞，怕丢脸，怕麻烦，伪装一切很正常，这样好不好？我的建议是偶尔为之是很好，常常这样是不好的。偶尔为之，有时候有这个需要，但是常常这样，你太对不起自己。所以有人他是关起门来痛哭一场，然后出来跟没事一样，这种调剂。其实流眼泪对眼睛好，对身体也好，但是过分的哀痛是不行的，你会受不了。我们应该要记住，长期的隐藏难过对身体是好的，适当的让它排泄，因为长期的隐藏、长期的忍住会变成无力感，而无力感再下去就变成无助感，最后自己会不得。那下面我们谈谈什么叫哀伤。哀伤跟难过其实十分密。
There is no problem of life in the sense in which we ordinarily use that phrase. And that seems an almost astounding affront to our common sense. Life not a problem. We see it as nothing but problems. We regard ourselves in a morning, noon, and night struggle to solve the great problem of existence. And for some people this problem is, why does the universe exist? For other people the problem is, how am I going to get enough to eat? And therefore, when you take it at one extreme or the other, who can say that life is not a problem? And yet here is this audacious suggestion that what we are bothering about is a ghost. It's something that isn't really there. One of the characteristics of neurotic behavior, you know, is it's repetitive. The neurotic personality keeps going through unsuccessful life patterns again and again and again, and nothing seems to be able to stop it. The round, or the rat race, of birth and death, that is to say, of life as we ordinarily live it. Because it is a round, it is a vicious circle, for the reason that we keep trying to solve problems that are not simply overwhelmingly difficult, but problems that are not problems at all. They only look like problems. And so when we tackle, you see, impossible questions, things go round and round and never come out. Now, take, for example, some of the many ghosts which haunt our minds. We say, for example, that we all have an instinct to survive. And a lot of people thus treat the problem of life as, how am I to survive? And one might almost be a little cautious about relieving people of this problem, lest they should lose the impetus to go on doing their work. But that also, impetus to go on doing your work, is another ghost. We think we are driven, you see. We think that what we do has these mysterious things behind it. See, it's very important simply to keep your eye on what is being done and to describe that. And if you describe it clearly enough and well enough, you will probably find that the ghost of instinct disappeared.
I don't have a target.
Thus, you see, when we talk about an instinct for survival, what is this saying? What is the evidence for the fact that there is an instinct for survival? There is no evidence except that, in fact, people survive until they don't. And this is rather odd, because what happens to the instinct for survival when people don't survive? So, in this way, we find that when we try to explain some kind of behavior, some kind of activity, by supposing that there is a motivating force, a sort of incarnate spook behind the whole thing, what has really happened is that we haven't described what's going on sufficiently clearly. Now, this comes out in another way. When we try to describe anything at all and think that we are describing something that, as it were, exists all by itself. As I've often said, we are so bugged by the notion of stuff, you see. Stuff acting, stuff doing things. But all that is, you see, is that the world strikes us as being material until we examine it closely. In other words, a distant nebula in the heavens looks like a solid star until you turn a giant telescope on it and you make out the clear pattern of a spiral nebula. In other words, the concept of stuff is a sensation that we get when we haven't examined things sufficiently closely, or when our instruments are not fine enough to penetrate what we're observing. But when the instruments are fine enough, what we get instead is pattern, and pattern is simply a form of behavior, of activity. Consider this in another way. Let's go back to the human organism and ask the question, well, what about its shape? How is it that a human organism is contained? All the organs are kept in by the skin. Well, we will describe, of course, the structure of skin and how it is that it holds together. But then we'll soon find out that we're also talking about the surrounding air, which impinges upon the human skin with a pressure of about 15 pounds per square inch, so that if it weren't there, we'd explode. Now, so the question arises, what is keeping the organism in shape? And we find out that it is not only what is going on inside the skin that keeps it in shape, but also what's going on outside the skin. And when we go on to describe this still more carefully, we discover that it isn't quite correct to say that it is the air that is doing this, or that it is the organism that is doing this. We begin to describe instead what Dewey and Bentley, in their very fascinating book, Knowing and the Known, call a transaction. Now, that is to say, a buyer can't buy unless somebody is also selling. You can't know anything unless there's something to know. And this fact, you see, is constantly overlooked, that anything in the world, whether it's inanimate or animate, whatever it may be, is there by virtue of being in a transactional relationship. Not with something else, but with everything else. A human being, of course, has ever so many relationships. They're very complicated. A person, say, we call a doctor, is not only related to his actual work of doctoring, but he may be also a father related to a family. He's a citizen related to a community in other ways than as the doctor, and so on and so forth. And so we begin to imagine him, as it were, apart from his relationships, as a sort of constant, going through all these different relationships, and therefore in some way different. But this, you see, creates a ghost. It creates a being independent of all the different relationships in which he finds himself, whereas, strictly speaking, he is inseparable from it. And we can't eliminate it. We can only describe it fully as the entire whole complex. So that, in other words, every organism could be called the behavior of the field or environment in which it is found. Now, this doesn't mean that the organism is something pushed around by the environment and is completely passive and inert, and that everything that it does is simply a response to external stimuli. Because, in a way, the organism is part of its environment. After all, it is an object, a process in nature, in the cosmos, just as much as everything in its environment. There is really no way of separating the two. Instead of speaking, as it were, in this terminology of doers and done-tos, attackers and victims, we simplify things considerably. Just by confining ourselves to a description of what is happening. And as we do this, we get a peculiarly clarified picture of the world, without all sorts of ghosts. And it is in this way that we also begin to be able to have some preliminary intuition or sensation of the meaning of the fact that life is not a problem. In other words, not a contest between ourselves and our environment. This conception of life turns out to be basically phony. You know, I've said that there are only 4 fundamental philosophical questions. The first is who started it. The second is, are we going to make it? The third is, where are we going to put it? And the fourth is, who's going to clean up? I happen to be a lover of archery. But I don't like archery for killing things. I like it as a sport. But what I like most of all is to set an arrow free, like it were a bird. You know, when it gets far up in the sky, whee! You watch it. And it suddenly turns and drops. What is it that fascinates us about that? Because it's not useful. It doesn't really achieve anything that we would call purposive work. It simply is what we call play. But in our culture, we make an extremely rigid division between work and play. You're supposed to work in order to earn enough money to give you sufficient leisure time for something entirely different called having fun or play. And this is the most ridiculous division of things, because everything that we do, however tough it is, however strenuous, can be turned into the same kind of play as I was showing you when I was completely fascinated with spinning that orange around my head. Let's, for example, take the situation that I ran into a little while ago. I was in the New York subway at 59th Street near Columbus Circle, and I wanted to get my shoes shined. And here was this black fellow who was making shoe shining a real art. He got his cloth, you know, which you spread out like this, and would go over my shoe. Like that. See? He was dancing while he was working. And he had just the same fascination in shining shoes as one has spinning this thing around one's head. Imagine, too, if you were a bus driver. Bus driver is ordinarily considered an absolutely harassed person. He's got to watch out for all the laws, all the competing traffic, the cops, the people coming on board giving their fares, and he has to give them change. And if he has it in his head that this is work, it will be hell. But let's suppose he has a different thing in his head. Supposing he has the idea that moving this enormous conveyance through complicated traffic is a very, very subtle game. And he has the same feeling about it that you might have if you were playing the guitar or dancing. And so he goes through that traffic, avoiding this and avoiding that and taking a fare like this, and he makes the music of the whole thing. Well, he's not going to be tired out at the end of the day. He's going to be full of energy when he gets through his job. Or suppose you're condemned to be a housewife, which is the most lowly of all occupations, and you have to clean up. You know, I've said that there are only 4 fundamental philosophical questions. The first is, who started it? The second is, are we going to make it? The third is, where are we going to put it? And the fourth is, who's going to clean up? And this is the lowliest of all occupations: the housewife who washes the dishes and the garbage collector who takes away the stuff. And he has to find out where we're going to put it. So now, who's going to clean up? Incidentally, if you ask yourself these 4 questions in order: who started it? Are we going to make it? Where are we going to put it? And who's going to clean up? It prompts a 5th question, which is it serious? Like, doctor, is it serious? Well, supposing it isn't. And then the housewife who's going to clean up approaches washing dishes in an entirely different spirit. And don't think that I'm some sort of male chauvinist who's trying to talk women into the idea of staying in their place. because I'm perfectly willing to wash dishes too, because the art of washing dishes is that you only have to wash one at a time. If you're doing it day after day, you have in your mind's eye an enormous stack of filthy dishes which you have washed up in years past, and an enormous stack of filthy dishes which you will wash up in years future. But if you bring in your mind to the state of reality, which is, as I've pointed out to you, only now, this is where we are. There is only now. You only have to wash one dish. It's the only dish you'll ever have to wash, this one. You ignore all the rest, because in reality, there is no past and there is no future. There is just now. So you wash this one. And instead of thinking, have I got it really clean, as my mother taught me with an angry voice, that I had to get every little scrap off it, you know, and she got angry at you. Instead, you turn the cleaning movement into a dance. Like this. And you dig that. And you swing that plate around. And you let the rinsing water go over it. And you put it off in the rack. Crazy. See? Take the next one. And you get this rhythm going. See? And you're not under compulsion all the time. You know, when I was a little boy and went to school in England, I had to learn the piano. They called it playing the piano. But actually, they said you must play. We had in England compulsory games. They used to post notices on the bulletin board in the school where I went to, which said, this afternoon everyone will go for a run. And if you didn't go for a run, and it was found out that you hadn't, you were flogged. So everybody hated going for a run, because they were under compulsion to play. Everybody must play. It's like the whole game of life we're all involved in. It's only a game. Everybody has got to belong. So we went running. I remember one day I was out on a run, and I was trying to enjoy myself because I was running on the balls of my feet, dancing along. And a fellow came up behind me who was running on his heels. He was jogging. And he was going clump, 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 clump. And I said to him, what's the matter with you? You're running on your heels, and you're jarring your whole body all the way through. Okay, but he stuck to it, and he became the champion long-distance runner of the school. But he didn't enjoy it. It was work. And all he enjoyed was the suffering that he endured that made him feel that he had really contributed to the human race, because he suffered so much. He identified his existence and his worth with his suffering.
I think I got disconnected.
Really great runners dance when they run. They don't necessarily follow a straight course. They may weave. And in the same way, if you happen to witness in the year 1970, the World Cup Championship in soccer, you would have seen that the winning team from Brazil played soccer in a most extraordinary way. They played it like basketball. They played it dancing. The way we learned soccer in school when I was a boy was very, very formal and orderly, and we didn't really enjoy it. But these fellows were bouncing balls off their shoulders, off every muscle, and they had astonishing teamwork. But at the same time, dancing the game, and the sports writer in the London Times said that they danced their way through it. So the point is, therefore, that you can do everything you have to do in this spirit. Don't make a distinction between work and play. Regard everything that you're doing as play, and don't imagine for 1 minute that you've got to be serious. See, this is the real secret of life. To be completely engaged with what you're doing in the here and now. Instead of calling it work, realize that this is play. In Hindu philosophy, the whole creation is regarded as the Vishnu Leela. That means the play of Vishnu. Leela means dance or play, and from it we get our word lilt. They also, in Hindu philosophy, call the world an illusion. And in Latin, the root of the word illusion is ludere, to play. Because all this going on, the swinging of the ball, the pattern in which the flower goes, is just to swing. And if you take it seriously and say, are you doing anything useful? Useful for what? Useful to go on. But if you take that attitude to going on becomes a drag. Survival becomes a sweat, and it's not worth it. And if you teach your children, and they'll imitate you, they'll treat survival as a sweat which they have to undergo, they have to keep going on, and they'll teach their children to do it, and the whole continuation of the human race will be a drag, which is in fact what it's become because of this attitude, and this is the reason why we've invented the atomic bomb and are preparing to commit suicide. Because we think we must happen. And to the degree that we think we must happen, we hate it. And are going to bring it to an end. And stop it. So I was about to say seriously, but I'm going to change my words and say sincerely suggest. You know, I'm not, in talking to you, I'm not preaching. I'm not actually serious, because I'm really with this rather than any kind of deep philosophy and so on. So I suggest to you sincerely, G.K. Chesterton once said that the angels fly because they take themselves lightly. How much more so then he, she who is Lord of the angels. Huh. The whole world is 3 for a penny, 3 for a pound, 'tis love that makes the world go round. Or in the words of Dante, but my own wings were not so fluttered, were not for such a flight, except that, smiting through the mind of me, there came fulfillment in a flash of light, that my volition now and my desires were moved like wheel revolving even by love that moves the sun a starry fire.
Ah, damn. Where's the tent?
What are you looking for? Down.
I wonder if it's ever struck you how curious a thing it is
that most of the things that we experience, we regard as things that happen to us, which we ourselves do not originate, which are events expressing some sort of power or activity that is external to ourselves. And if you consider that, you realize that what you mean by yourself is rather narrowly circumscribed. Even events that go on in our own bodies are put in the category of things that happen to us in the same way as things that go on in the world outside our skins. If there's a thunderstorm or an earthquake, well, it happens to you. You're not responsible for it. But so in the same way, when you have hiccups, you didn't plan on it. If you have belly rumbles, you had no intention of doing it. And as to the catastrophic act of getting born, well, you had nothing to do with that. And you can spend all your life blaming your parents for putting you in the situation in which you find yourself. And this way of looking at the world in this sort of passive mood as something that happens to you goes right down to our general feeling about life. It goes down to the way in which, as Westerners, we have been accustomed to look at human existence as a precarious event in a cosmos that, on the whole, is depicted as being completely unsympathetic and alien to our existence. In other words, if you're reared with a 20th century, or shall we say an early 20th century common sense, which is based on the philosophy of science of the 19th century, with its rejection of Christianity and Judaism, you regard yourself as an accident, a biological accident, in a stupid universe, which is mechanical, but has no feelings, no finer feelings. A vast, pointless gyration of radioactive rocks and gas in which you happen to occur. Of course, if you don't have that point of view and you are more traditional, you look upon yourself as a child of God. And therefore, under authority. In other words, there's a big boss on top of all this who allowed you, at his pleasure, to deign to have the disgusting effrontery to exist. And you better watch your P's and Q's, because that Almighty is looking after you with the attitude of this is going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you. And when you look at the world in that image, or in the other image that it's a stupid mechanism, either point of view you take, you don't really belong. You're not really part of all this. And I could use a stronger word than part, only we don't have it in English. We have to say something like connected with it, essential to it, or to put it in the strongest possible way, it is quite alien to Western thought to conceive that the external world, which is defined as something that happens to you, and your body itself as something that you've got caught up with, it is quite alien to our thought to consider all that as you yourself. Because you see, we have such a myopic view of what oneself is. It's as if, in other words, we selected how much experience is really to be regarded as me. As if you focused your attention on certain restricted areas of the whole panorama of things that you experience, and say, I will take sides with that much of it. Now, we come here right at the start to an extremely important principle, which is the different points of view you get when you change your level of magnification. That is to say, you can look at something with a microscope and see it a certain way. You can look at it with the naked eye and see it in a certain way. You look at it with a telescope and you see it in another way. Now, which level of magnification is the correct one? Well, obviously, they're all correct, but they're just different points of view. You can, for example, look at a newspaper photograph under a magnifying glass, and where with the naked eye you will see a human face, with the magnifying glass you will just see a profusion of dots, rather meaninglessly scattered. But as you stand away from that collection of dots, which all seem to be separate and apart from each other, they suddenly arrange themselves into a pattern. And you see that these individual dots add up to some kind of sense. Now you'll see at once from this illustration that maybe you, when you take a myopic view of yourself, as most of us do, but you may add up to some kind of sense that is not apparent to you in your ordinary consciousness. When we examine our bloodstreams under a microscope, we see there's one hell of a fight going on. All sorts of microorganisms are chewing each other up. And if we got overly fascinated with our view of our own bloodstreams in the microscope, we should start taking sides, which would be fatal, because the health of our organism depends on the continuance of this battle. What is, in other words, conflict at one level of magnification is harmony at a higher level. Now, could it possibly be, therefore, that we, with all our problems, conflicts, neuroses, sicknesses, political outrages, wars, tortures, and everything that goes on in human life, are a state of conflict which can be seen in a larger perspective as a situation of harmony? Well, it is claimed, you see, that some human beings have broken through to that vision, that they've slipped somehow or other into states of consciousness where they see the apparent disintegration and disorganization of everyday life as the functioning of a totality which at its level is completely harmonious. And you could say, aha, at last I see, I got the point. I've seen how all this makes sense. But what this insight depended upon was your overcoming the illusion that space separates things. That is to say, the space, the interval between your body and mine. The interval created by birth at one end and death at the other. And then after somebody's death, then somebody else's birth. These are events with intervals between them. And normally we regard these intervals in time and these intervals in space as having no importance, no function. We tend to see the universe itself as really consisting in all the stars and galaxies. That's what it is. That's what we notice. But the space in which all this happens is sort of written off as something that isn't really there. But what one has to realize is that the space is an essential function of the things in the space. After all, you can't have separate stars unless there is a space around them. Eliminate the space and you will see you couldn't have this phenomenon at all. And vice versa. You couldn't have the space. They wouldn't be there in any sense whatsoever if there weren't the bodies in it. So the bodies in the space and the space are two aspects of a single continuum. They're related together in exactly the same way as a back and a front. And you just don't get one without the other. So the moment you see that intervals, that space is connective, you can understand at once how you are not just to be exclusively defined as a flash of consciousness that occurs between two eternal darknesses, which is the popular common sense view which Western man has of his own life. That you consider that in the darkness that comes before your birth, there was no you, and in the eternal darkness that follows your death, to any special spooky knowledge, as if I had been traveling on the higher planes and knew all my previous incarnations and therefore could tell you authoritatively that you are much more than this individuality. I'm going to do it on a basis of complete common sense, that everybody has access to the facts. And that just what you have to realize is that life is a pattern of immense complexity. And what you call yourself as a living organism, say, I am my whole body at the very least. Now, what is that body? That body is recognizable, and I recognize my friends when I meet them again, with luck, and you recognize me. Although the last time any of you saw me, I was absolutely something entirely different from what I am now. Just as the flame of a candle is never a constant. A flame of a candle is a stream of hot gas. Only you say the flame of the candle as if it were a constant. Well, it is a recognizably constant pattern. The spear-shaped outline of the flame and its coloration is a constant pattern. But in exactly the same way, we are all constant patterns. And that's all we are. The only thing constant about us at all is the doing rather than the being. It's the way we behave, the way we dance. Only there's no we that dances. There's just the dancing. Just as the flame is the streaming of hot gas, just as a whirlpool in a river is a whirling of streaming water. There is no thing that whirlpools. There is the whirlpool. And in the same way, each one of us is a very, very delightfully complex undulation of the energy of the whole universe. Only by our process of miseducation, we've been deprived of the knowledge of that fact. Not as if though there was someone to blame for this, because it's always with our own tacit consent. Because life is basically a game of hide and seek. Because life is pulsation, on and off. Here it is, and now it isn't. And by being this pulsation, we know it's there. See, you don't know what you mean by on unless you know what you mean by off. That's why when we want to awaken someone, we knock at the door. It's not enough to slam the door once with your fist and make a big noise, but you keep up a pulsation, because that by its on and offness attracts attention. All life, you see, is this flickering in and out. Only there are enormous rhythms in it. There are very fast flickering ins and outs, like the reaction of light upon our eyes, such that if I take a lighted cigarette in the dark and I spin it, you will see a circle of fire. Because the reflection of that cigarette tip on your retina lasts, it endures. Just in the same way as on a radar screen. An image stays a little while until it's revivified by another round. So in that way, you see, you notice continuity. And in the same way then, you notice the continuity of a light, because although, like say, with an arc lamp is actually a flickering light. And that's why they don't allow arc lights to be used in any shop where there's a circular saw moving. Because sometimes the flickering speed of the arc light so synchronizes with the turning speed of the teeth on the blade that the teeth look as if they're not moving. And so anybody who might put his hand on the blade would have it chopped off, thinking it was a still one. So in this way, very fast impulses are looked upon us as constant. And we see where there are fast impulses a solid thing. When you look at the blade of a propeller or an electric fan, the separated 4 or 3 blades become a solid disc, and you cannot throw an egg through it. Well, so in exactly the same way, you can't put your finger through a rock, because the rock is moving too fast for your finger to go through. That's the meaning of the whole phenomenon of hardness. Hardness in nature is immense energy, but acting in a very concentrated space, restricted space, but going to beat hell. That's why you can't get through it. Now, from those very tiny fast rhythms, which give us the impression of continuity, there are also in this universe immensely slow rhythms. And these are very difficult for us to keep track of. And they impress us and depress us as our own life and death, as our coming and going, which goes for what is to us such a slow pace that we can't possibly believe that it is really a rhythm. We think of it as our birth, as something quite unique that could never occur again, because we're so close to it, you see, and it's moving so slowly. And so with that point of view, we are, like Marshall McLuhan said, he borrowed a metaphor from me, which is that we are driving a car looking at the rear vision mirror. That means that the environment in which you believe yourself to exist is always a past one. It isn't the one you're actually in. The process of growth, the basic process of biology, is one in which lower orders are always being superseded by higher orders. But the lower order can never figure out, or only very rarely figure out, what the higher order is that's taking over, and may see it as a terrible threat, as total disaster, as the very end, but therefore can never be aware that the principle of growth always has and always will continue, because that's what's going on. But you never know what the next step is going to be, because if you did know, you wouldn't take it,
God.
because it would already be past. Do you understand this? That any certainly known future is an event of which we can say, you've had it. And in that sense, it's past. When we play games, and we say in chess or in bridge or whatever game you're playing, the outcome of the game becomes certain. We at that point cancel the game and begin a new one. Because the whole zest of the thing, and which takes me back to the idea that this whole thing is a hide-and-seek game, is that you don't know what the next order coming up is. But one thing you can be sure of, it will be an order, and it will comprehend you. At the moment, we stand at a time in history where we're beginning to think of the great countdown on the end of the human race. Terrifying possibility that through atomic energy, we may obliterate this planet and turn the whole globe into a star. Maybe that's the way all the stars started. Imagine, you know, this great thing coming up. The countdown on the end. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pam! Where have you heard that before? You sit on the seashore and you hear the waves going in and out, and you don't stop to think. That's what you're doing. That's what the whole business is doing. And there are places where the wave mounts and mounts and it gets too big for its boots or whatever, and it spills and breaks. And we could do just that. But very important to realize that that's what you're doing, because then you don't get panicky about it. And the person who's going to press that button is a person who's going to be in panic. So if you realize that that's what it is, and that it doesn't really matter if the whole human race blows itself up, then there's a chance that it won't do it. That's the only chance we have. Not to do this thing which attracts us like a kind of vertigo, like a person who looks over a precipice and is all set to throw himself over. Or a person who jumps out of a plane when they're skydiving and forgets to pull the parachute ring because he gets fascinated with a target. It's called target fascination. He just goes straight at it, you see. So we can get absolutely fascinated with disaster, with doom. Or, you know, all the news in the newspapers is invariably bad news. There is no good news in the newspapers. People wouldn't buy a newspaper consisting of good news. Even the free press is full of terrible news.
Careful, man.
Except the San Francisco Oracle. And the fascination, you see, for this doom might be neutralized if we would say, well, why bother about that? It's just another fluctuation in this huge, marvelous, endless chain of our own selves and our own energy going on. See, here's the problem. Because of our myopia, because of the way we've, as it were, restricted consciousness to focus upon just that certain little area of experience that we call voluntary action. That's us. And everything else happens to us. Now, that's obviously absurd. Let's suppose you take in your hand one of those toys, a gyroscopic top. And you suddenly notice, the minute you get this in your hand, that it has a kind of vitality to it. It seems to resist you. It starts pushing you in a certain way, see? And sometimes you're with it and following it. And then sometimes you see it, it's just as if you held a living animal in your hand. You know, you pick up a hamster, you know, or a guinea pig, and you hold this little thing in your hand, it's always trying to escape. So the gyroscope always seems to be trying to escape your hold. Now, in exactly the same way, what you're experiencing all the time, all sorts of things are getting out of control and doing things you don't expect. It's trying to escape your hold. All right, then don't grab it. And you discover that this living thing that you're feeling, like the gyroscope top, it's your own life. Because you can see very simply that you would not understand the experience that you call voluntary action and decision, being in control and being yourself, unless in opposition to that there was something else. You couldn't realize self and control and will unless there was something other, out of control, and instead of will, won't. It's the two together only that produces the sensation that you call having a personal identity. Only, there is a funny thing about human consciousness which has been worked out very carefully in Gestalt psychology, which is that our attention is captured by the figure rather than the background, by the relatively enclosed area rather than the diffuse area, and by something moving rather than what is relatively still. And to all those phenomena that in this way attract our attention, we attribute a higher degree of reality than the ones we don't notice. That's only because, for the moment, those are more important to us. Consciousness, you see, is a radar that is scanning the environment to look out for trouble, just in the same way as a ship's radar is looking for rocks or other ships. And the radar, therefore, does not notice the vast areas of space where there are no rocks, no other ships. So in the same way, our eyes, or rather the selective consciousness behind the eyes, only pays attention to what we think is important. I am at this moment aware of all of you in this room, of every single detail of your clothing, of your faces, and so on, but I'm not noticing it all. And therefore I will not be able to remember tomorrow exactly how each one of you looked and what you were wearing. Because what I notice is restricted to things that I think are particularly important. If I notice some particularly beautiful girl in the audience, then I might notice also what she's wearing, and that would be memorable. But by and large, you see, we scan things over, but we pay attention only to what our set of values tells us we ought to pay attention to. But quite obviously, you as a complete individual are much more than the scanning system. You are in relationships with the external world that on the whole are incredibly harmonious. And so in this way, we have this rather myopic way of looking at things. And we screen out from attention anything that is not immediately important to a scanning system based on sensing danger. But quite obviously, you as a complete individual are much more than the scanning system. You are in relationships with the external world that on the whole are incredibly harmonious. Going back to this illustration of every living body as something like the flame of a candle, the energies of life in the form of temperature, light, air, and food, and so on, are streaming through you all at this moment in the most magnificently harmonious way. And you're, all of you, far more beautiful than any candle flame. Just sitting in these chairs, just going. Only we are so used to it. We say about that, so what? Show me something interesting. Show me something new. Because it's a characteristic of consciousness that it ignores stimuli that are constant. When anything is constant, it says, okay, that's safe, it's in the bag, needn't pay attention to that anymore. And therefore, we eliminate systematically from our awareness all the gorgeous things that are going on all the time, and instead only become focused on the things, the troublesome things that might happen to upset it. Which is all right, but we make too much of it. And we make so much of it that we identify our very selves, I, ego, with the radar, with the troubleshooter. And that's only a tiny fragment of one's total being. So that if you do become aware that you are not simply that scanning mechanism, but you are your complete organism, then very swiftly, in turn, as a consequence of that, you become aware that your organism is not the way you think about it when you look at it from the standpoint of conscious attention, from the standpoint of the ego. From the standpoint of the ego, your organism is your kind of vehicle, your automobile in which you go around. But from a physical point of view, your organism is again like the candle flame or the whirlpool. It is something which is a continuous patterning or activity of the whole cosmos. The key idea here is pattern. Let's suppose I'm going to borrow a metaphor from Buckminster Fuller. Suppose we have a rope, and one section of this rope is made of manila hemp. The next section is cotton. The next section is silk. The next section is nylon, and so on. Now we tie a knot in this rope. Just an ordinary one-over knot. You find by putting your finger in the knot, you can move it all the way down the rope. Now, as this knot travels, it's first of all made of manila hemp, it's then made of cotton, it's then made of silk, it's then made of nylon, and so on. But the knot keeps going on. And that's the integrity of pattern, the continuing pattern, which is what you are. Because you might, for several years you might be a vegetarian, and you might be a meat eater, and so on, and your constitution changes all the time, but your friends still recognize you, because you're still putting on the same show. It's the same pattern. That is the recognizable individual. But we are trained in our language. The very structure of the language we talk deceives us into misunderstanding this. Because when we see a pattern, we ask, what's it made of? Like you see a table. Is it made of wood or is it made of aluminum? But then when you inquire into what is wood and how does wood differ from aluminum, the only thing a scientist can tell you is the different patterns, that is to say, the different molecular structure of the two things. And a molecular structure is not a description of what something is made of. It is a description of what dance it is performing, what motions, what kind of a symphony this is. Because basically, all phenomena of life are musical. And gold differs from lead in exactly the same way that a waltz differs from a mazurka. It's a different dance. And there isn't anything that's dancing. That is a deception we get into because we have two parts of speech in our grammar. We have nouns and verbs. And verbs are supposed to describe the activities of nouns. And this is simply a convention of speech. You could have a language with only verbs in it. You don't need any nouns, or you could also have a language with the nouns only and no verbs. And it would perfectly adequately describe what's going on in the world. So if you were used to speaking with a language that had one part of speech, you could say just as much as we can with two, and be a lot clearer. Only at first it would sound awkward, but you'd soon get used to it. And then when you got used to it, it would be a matter of common sense that the patterning of the world is not some kind of stuff that's patterning. You don't have to seek for a substance underlying the whole thing, it's just patterning. And we're all that. And wherever you see patterning, you will see the principle that big fleas have little fleas upon their backs to bite them, little fleas have lesser fleas, and so ad infinitum. And then you reverse the process, see? Little fleas, infinitely little fleas, are always on the back of bigger fleas. And those bigger fleas are on the back of still bigger ones. And those bigger fleas are on the back of still more whopping fleas, you see? It goes the other way too. And so in this way, there is, to a person who really wakes up, you very soon realize that your existence is not something that is just the hopeless little creature that's suddenly confronted with a great big external world that goes gah at him, and eats him up. Every tiniest little thing that comes into being, every minute little fruit fly or gnat or bacterium, I will go so far as to say, is an event upon which this whole cosmos depends. This thing goes both ways. It's not only that every little organism which exists depends on its total environment. The reverse is also true, that the total environment depends on each and every one of those little organisms. So that you could say, this universe consists of an arrangement of pattern in which every event is essential to the whole thing. Now, we screen that idea out of our consciousness in exactly the same way that we screen out the perception of space as an important reality. Just as we pay attention to the figure and ignore the background, so we see one way of looking at things, namely that the organism is very frail against the environment. It lasts a long time, the environment, but the organism only lasts a short time. What do you mean the environment lasts a long time? What does the environment consist of? Just a lot of little things. And yet there is the environment just as the same way as there is the face in the newspaper photograph behind all those little dots. When you get far enough away from it, you see the face. When you get far enough away from all the organisms and the little bits of things, you see the environment in another scale of magnification. But actually, the whole thing is arranged in a polar system where the enormous depends on the tiny and the tiny depends on the enormous. And you get a relationship between these extremes which can be called a transaction. That is to say, a transaction, when there's buying and selling, it's impossible to have buying without selling and selling without buying. They always go together. But of course, the person you see who's interested in buying thinks more about buying than he thinks about the other fellow selling. And if he does that, he's going to get a bad buy, because he doesn't really think about the mechanisms the other fellow's using to sell. And if I want to sell something and think too much about selling, I don't enter sufficiently into the psychology of the buyer. So then I'm not a good business shark. So in this way, we are always, as it were, overemphasizing a certain aspect of our experience. And we say, now, what is important about people? This is the great credo of the West. Is there unique individuality? And we have been given an immense psychic investment in our own individuality by our upbringing. What are you going to amount to? What are you going to contribute to human life? What's your particular destiny going to be? It's a fine idea. But the thing we don't understand is that it won't work, this great idea, without being balanced with its opposite. Just as you can't have the back without the front. So you cannot have the values of a unique personality unless at the same time everybody recognizes that there is another level at which we're not unique at all, but that I am you and you are I. That, in other words, the so-called I that we all have, you see, every one of you feels that you're the center of the universe and that everything else is happening around you in a circle. You can turn around and you can see sort of equally far in all directions, especially if you're in a ship in the middle of the ocean. So you're in the middle. And it's true from the standpoint of astronomy. We live in a curved space-time continuum, that is to say, in a universe at which every point may be regarded as the center. Consider a sphere. Here's a ball. What point on this ball is the center of its surface? You can see at once that any point can be the center of its surface. So legitimately, all points in the universe are the center. That's St. Bonaventure's description of God, that circle whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. So everybody's in that situation. And at that depth of your existence, we are all like the nerve ends on your own skin. See, at every point on your skin, there's a little nerve end going beep and getting information from the outside world. Another and another and another, all over. And they all constitute your total sensitivity. Well, so in the same way, and all these people sitting around here with their little eyes and little ears and things, they're going peek, and they're all really one common center called I, which is looking at itself from ever so many different points of view. Only we are so close to it and we are so absorbed in the different ways each one of them is doing that we neglect the community underneath. Just like when you never seen Chinese people before and you go into a bunch of Chinese people and you can't tell the difference between them. You think, well, all Chinese look the same. Well, the Chinese, when they first saw us, they thought we all looked the same. We all had red hair and long noses. And then when you get to know, when I live in Japan for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then suddenly all the Japanese start turning into people. And they look like, they don't look Japanese anymore, they just look like people. They're all different. See? As you get to a certain level, then all the individuality comes out. So if in other words, someone from an entirely different form of biology came to this planet and looked at us, he wouldn't know the difference between Negroes, Greeks, Armenians, and white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. They would all look to him exactly the same. And he would see us as, in other words, he'd look at a group like this here, and he would call it a thing. You know, just as you see a set of false teeth, and they all look pretty much alike, and you say, well, that's a set of false teeth. So you see a set of people sitting around, and say, well, that's a thing. It's like a caterpillar with so many legs on it, you know? It breaks up and reforms and so on. It's rather interesting. It's like hydras, you know. You can take hydras and put them in an osterizer. Flatworms, excuse me. You can take flatworms, and you can teach them certain tricks. And then you put them in an osterizer and pulverize them. Then they reform themselves, and they know the tricks you taught them. And you can mix up those who do and those who don't. And those who do learn the tricks can convey it to the new ones that didn't know them, see? So that maybe one day we can get some DNA from genius people and feed it to people who don't know anything, and immediately they learn these tricks. Think of that. But the meaning of all that, talking about DNA and osterized flatworms, is that what is transmitted all the time is the repetition of pattern, the repetition of certain rhythms. And that this whole rhythmic system may be looked at in this way. Let's just take any pattern. We can form a pattern, say, of like this. See? I make a kind of a loop-ended cross in the air. Now, let's consider what is the problem involved in analyzing that pattern into smaller parts. Shall I say each one of these loops is a part, and there are 4 parts, therefore, to the pattern? Well, where does a loop begin and end? Just excuse me, let's look at it another way. I could say that not this was a part, but this was a part of the pattern. And there were 4 of those. You should all study, incidentally, the drawings of a great Dutch artist by the name of Escher, whose work appeared a little while ago in the Scientific American, but he has a book of the most fantastic patterns, where you will see, for example, an arrangement of devils. And when you look at the background, it's an arrangement of angels. That everything goes with its counterpoint. So that when you look at one of Escher's pictures, you don't know which is the foreground and which is the background. You just flip, 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 and you can have it either way. Well, everything's like that. Only because, as I said, we are fascinated with what we have at the moment selected as the foreground. We say, foreground. It comes before. It's important. That's what's there, the background. Oh, that's just background, see? Supposing you suddenly do a flip on that, you realize the foreground, yeah, it's kind of close, but as we say of people, you could only see the trees, you can't see the forest. It's like businessmen who say they're very practical, but they're very short-sighted and don't know what's good for them. And put themselves out of their business regularly, so they have to start wars in order to carry on business. And, you know, that's stupid. So you always, wherever you are looking at the general panorama of sensory experience, try switching. Try shifting your attention to all the things you thought were unimportant, to the constants, to the background, and begin looking at the spaces between people. All painters have to learn this, because especially if you're working in oils, you actually have to paint in the background. Weavers know this, Because when they're making patterns in weaving, they've got to weave the background as well. Or if you do needlepoint with embroidery, think of the hours you spend putting in the background over the canvas in wool. And you become aware of it. Same way the people who made the great Oriental carpets. They're much more aware of the background as constituting an essential part of the total experience. So as you become aware of this, you see the same thing that you notice in music, namely that it is only as a result of hearing the interval between tones that you hear any melody. If you don't hear the interval, you're tone deaf, and all notes are the same noise. All you hear is rhythm. You don't hear any melody. You've got to hear the interval. So then watch the intervals between people. The things that aren't said, the things that are tacit, the things that are implicit rather than explicit in all life. And then you begin to get connected. You know, it's very important to have a connection in life. And to be in the know. And this is the way it fundamentally comes out. Of seeing the thing you forgot. You know, you can always bug people in a beautiful way, in a very helpful way, by just saying to them, what did you forget? Say, well, I don't know. What was I supposed to remember? Oh, I'm really not trying to put you on. I mean, it's not difficult. This is something completely obvious that you forgot.
What brings you here?
You'd easily remember it because it's so obvious. Well, that's the hardest thing in the world to think of. What's the most obvious thing I forgot? Oh, what's that? Well, who do you think you are?
We shall meet again. You wish to speak?
Well, how do you answer that question? Who are you?
Farewell.
Well, you give a name. You say, I'm Joe Dokes, I'm Alan Watts. That's not true. That's what people told you you were. They put that name on you, and they taught you to identify with it and to behave as it was expected to behave. But that's not who you are. You know very well. Go back in your memory. Go back into your infancy before they started telling you all this stuff. Who are you? And if you get with that, you'll know very well who you are. The jolly old ancient of days.
Time is money, friend.
Only there's a conspiracy that you mustn't let on about that. Because everybody is. And if one person realizes it, the other's a little bit offended. And they say, well, how come you're so great? We worked it in Christianity by a very clever thing of allowing just one individual to be recognized as the God incarnate. And nobody else, therefore, could be. And since he had been safely crucified and whisked up to heaven, he wouldn't bother us anymore. So everybody, therefore, who gets an intimation of who they really are and ever comes out with it in Christian civilization, people say, who the hell do you think you are? You Jesus Christ? Well, you can say Jesus Christ said he was Jesus Christ and everybody put him down for it, and that's what you're doing to me. Oh, they say, forget that one. Because it's like somebody comes out and composes some perfectly, it's a cacophonist. He is completely incompetent. And he said, did you read the reviews of Beethoven's First Symphony when it was performed at Vienna? Now the thing is, we allowed one person, one human individual, to be the incarnate God. Because we have all been living in a theory of the universe in which the individual is simply involved in something that happens to him. And we feel that this thing that happens to us is reality. It is facts that we have to face and accept and cope with. See? It's always something other than you. You don't recognize it as an integral part of your own being, without which you cannot know what you mean by the word I. But in the truth of the matter is, though, that if you will face it out, every single one of us knows that that isn't true. There is as it were, a recess of the soul, of the psyche, where everybody knows perfectly well that you are not just this irresponsible little mouse that's been chucked down into this world, but that you are really doing this work. You're running it. Only you can't admit it, just in the same way as you can't admit that you're responsible for the way your own heart beats. You say, oh, that's not my doing. I've no control over my heart. Do you have any control over being conscious? Do you know how you will? And you say, I intend to take my hand down from my face and put it on my leg. I can do that, but I don't know how the hell it's done. So that what we mean by the capacity of voluntary control in the ordinary sense of the word is we don't understand it at all. So you might say, in a funny backwards way, that the only kind of control you really understand is that where you're not using your will. Because you just do it so easy, like you open and close your hand. You know how to do it? Sure you know how to do it. But you can't put it into words and explain to someone how to do it. You say, well, come on, aren't you human? Don't you know how to open and close your hand? Just do it, silly. But we don't realize, you see, that just as we know how to do this, we know equally well how to turn the sun into light, how to blue the sky, how to blow the wind, how to wave the ocean, how to digest food, and I might add, to be digested by bacteria and transformed. As we transform our steaks, we will in turn be transformed. But the pattern keeps going. And it's always you. Only you see, you have this marvelous capacity to transform yourself without knowing that you're doing it. Therefore, you keep surprising yourself. And therefore, you keep on doing it. Because if you didn't surprise yourself, you wouldn't go on doing it. It's just the very fact, you see, that you seem to be the victims of a thing you don't understand, and that you seem to conclude your life every time in a wipeout called death, where all your control goes, is just exactly that opposite condition to what you call being alive that allows you to be alive. Only every time it happens, it's like it's new. It's like every time you're born, it seems like it was the only time. But of course, if it wasn't like that, you wouldn't do it.
It's not ready yet. Zu here. We shall meet again. The winds guide you.
Talk to me. Later.
Relax. Good to meet you. What you looking for? Spirits be with you, man.
How you do it, man? Spirits. Got the good stuff, man. Stay away from the voodoo.
I'm out of range. It's too far away.
Gotta go. Let's see. I'm gonna come up here. 他肯定有那个，如果你去找得到，不是。Alright, gotta go.